Okay, so let me start with something I really care about when when I do innovation, and that's like one of my passion, which is food. And the interesting part is that that is valid for any type of industry, but this is very close to people body because that's kind of the thing that we do most after smartphone. So food is about something for everybody. So I wish you, you have only one word, but usually people have a lot of words when they describe what food is to them. You can think about it, like in the past, people have said a lot of things about what is food and why it's important for them and their families. But most of the concepts are about tradition. And this is really something I hear from many people. Food is about my past, my family, my emotion. It's about my inheritance. A lot of things that remind what builds us. And as always, I like to put a question mark because if you really want to do innovation, some people believe that tradition is your enemy, and that tradition is something you are, against, which I want to question. And as you can see here, maybe you can recognize what that is. It's a very ancient picture of sushi, which I put in favor of my friend from Japan, which just left, because that's like a very traditional food from Japan, is from 1,000 years. And the story is that from Southeast Asia, people wanted to transport fish from, where it was fished to Japan. And in order to do that, they would wrap it into a mixture of rice and vinegar, and this would arrive into Japan. At the beginning, they would open this kind of package, eat the fish, but then they started to eat the rice as well. And they discovered that it was really good together with the fish. And, that lasted until today, making sushi one of the most famous Japanese food. Another image that you can recognize, this is bread. And it's really interesting because it was discovered by humankind more than 14,000 years ago, mixing flour and water. And you have like two major breakthroughs after the discovery of this kind of food, which makes it one of the most traditional food we have on the planet. It's the discovery of yeast that was happening in the ancient Egypt, where without knowing what bacteria were and having no knowledge about microorganisms, they started to observe that yeast would make the bread better, and that they could cultivate yeast. And Egypt was selling yeast 3,500 or more years ago. And I mean, it feels like magic, but a magic that people really liked. So that tradition preserved bread until now. The second breakthrough innovation was happening in Greece, where they invented, and then in Italy, where they invented a new type of mill that instead of smashing grains by hand, would do it with mechanical force. And that's making the bread very thin and gentle, which is the thing that we like today. And I mean, since more than 2,000 years, this is happening every day in most parts of the world. The third image you can recognize is chocolate. And this story is more recent, lead us to, let's say, France last century, where, actually, centuries ago, to be honest, end of 1800, where one guy called Meunier invented not chocolate, but chocolate tablet. And the invention was so powerful that today, when we see chocolate and we think about chocolate, we don't think about the powder, we think about the tablet. And so many people were adopting this invention that became the traditional form of chocolate and made Meunier one of the richest family in France for more than 100 years. And they controlled 50% of the chocolate market for over a century. And that's really, really interesting because that put us into perspective, which, even the most stable tradition were once very successful innovation. So, we need to really, let's say, merge together tradition and innovation and make sure that those traditions are sustainable. Otherwise, they will be, substituted. Because if you cannot sustain an innovation, then we're not gonna stick around for so long. So I'll take the food industry as an example because it's one of the biggest industries on the planet and has a lot of disruption. And those disruptions are all around us. And it's interesting that for every innovation, you have basically two boundaries that you have to, let's say, consider. The lower boundary is called the social foundation. So if your innovation goes below this boundary, people will not use it. So you can have something super cool, very sustainable, very great, but if it's not good, the people will not eat it. So, we cannot go into the sustainability altogether because we need to consider that humans are, the people that need to buy and give value to our innovation. So below that, there's nothing, okay? And there is no matter into investing for something that people would not use it. And then you have another boundary, which is the ecological ceiling, which is, if you go above that boundary, then the planet will, reject this innovation because in the, short term or medium term or long term, we will have a big issue, and that will make the innovation not a source of value, but a source of problems, a source of, issues. And it's called the ecological ceiling. So as you can see, we have a green circle where we can really, we call it the donut, where we can really target our innovation. We need to consider it's our responsibility as designer to keep that always under our control. Because ultimately it's going to be our fault if we give somebody to people that harms the planet, and it's going to be our fault if we give something to people that will not use it. So it's still a waste of resources. So since there are people involved and the planet, we need to consider a systemic change. Not only climate, not only plastic, not only sustainability. As you can see, we have a lot of topics to keep into control. Okay, energy, water, food, health, education, a lot of things. Okay. And for that reason, to keep everything on your eyesight while you design, we start to develop a new approach that goes beyond design thinking. It's still, the basis of it, but has some more tools to control what we are doing here. So, you know, design thinking was evolved from marketing thinking, which is making people want things. And we already know that we need to go to making things people want. But as we acknowledge, and we cannot ignore anymore, that the planet, I mean, we live in a system that has finite resources, then we need to really go into making things the planet wants as well. So what is prosperity thinking? Prosperity thinking is an approach that aims to enable the design of a better food system, starting from a shared, inclusive idea of prosperity that encompasses not only economic growth, but also social and environmental well-being. So we need to consider those three aspects of sustainability. And it's an evolution of design thinking and goes beyond user-centered design to human and planet-centric growth. It has like four pillars, which are values, mindset, principle, and method. And I'll start from values. And of course, you can strive for a short-term gain, but that's not what we want to train and educate you here. We want to educate you to a better system that goes from considering collaboration to generosity, to equality, to health and well-being, to constant growth and development and diversity. So those are the values around prosperity thinking and about a vision of a system that is able to nurture our species and all the other ones. And the mindset is basically divided in three areas. The first one is approach to self, because if you really want to change the world, you need to start from yourself and understand what are the values and how you activate you towards a better system. And it's a choice. So yeah, it takes effort to do it, but we believe that's not, that's the only choice we have right now, because otherwise we're going to waste our planet. Second, we need to change the approach to the problem from, a basic understanding of what the problem is to a more systemic view, because we need to understand in the long term, and that's why we put this science fiction thinking. So in the long term, what are the outcomes of our solutions? So if we, if we develop a plastic bag, that's really convenient. It's very human-centered. You know, you go in the shop, and instead of having your own bags, you need to, people give you something very handy to carry your goods home. But we need to ask as designers, okay, what's the longer term consequence of this? Of throwing away every day millions of bags. We cannot say, yeah, we are ignorant. No, that doesn't work anymore. So we need to think about the long-term consequence, and that's why you need to change the approach to the problem from, I'm solving this problem of carrying food around, to I'm solving this problem considering the long-term consequences. And that's really, the third point, which is the approach to the world, which we need to think about not only to address the issue of, our, solutions, but also this idea of regenerative thinking. Like, if instead of giving you a plastic bag, they give you something that turns into, a compost, something that turns into better community, or something that you reuse for life. This is regenerative in a way. So it's not only helping to address the problem you are using, but has like a better sense of what does to the world, and this healing, this idea of with my solution also addressing other issues that are there already. So we need to basically reverse our thinking in order to do that. That's the first tool. It's called the I-square model. So usually you start from making a mental model and then creating structure and patterns and event that you want to produce into the world, but we probably need to think in other ways, so making the opposite. So start on making sure that unsustainable events don't happen, and then create better patterns towards sustainability, and then new structure, and then change your mental model. So basically make sure that you really want to address sustainability as a goal of your thinking, not because it just happened. So if you don't think this way, then you consider your isolated part. Like, this morning we had this beautiful talk by Hans Grohe, and they were saying, okay, I can give you a better experience saving 20% of the water you're using. This is considering the right approach, because it's not that people want a bad experience in the shower or something that takes 10 minutes more because there's no water. You need to have a better experience, and while doing that, save water for your planet. And that's something that that's the challenge now, okay? And in order to do that, we need to have a different tool, which is the system thinking tool. And this is a different approach from fixing my problem, addressing my needs. It's basically a different thinking model. And for that, I give you a second tool, which is this ecosystem design tool. Like, we've been used to think that we are on top of the pyramid, okay? We are the ones that can eat them all. But as a friend of mine used to say, this is plain wrong. So we are not in an ecosystem. We are not on top of a pyramid. We are part of an ecosystem where, we are, like everybody else. If we use the plastic bag we were talking before, and instead of, let's say, dispose it correctly, or, try to use it the least possible, we throw it away, there's no way. Like, there's no, a way, because we are in a closed system, in an ecosystem. So we don't throw away, we throw there. And there is on our ground. And this ground with the, with the rain and with the rivers goes into the water, and then goes into the sea, and then it's going to be eaten by fishes that we are going to eat. So it's not away, it's here. So we throw it here. And that's a different mindset. It's an ecosystem mindset where everything is connected, and it's nothing that we can, dispose. Yeah, we throw in a system that burns, but then, we deal with the consequence of that. Okay, so please consider that away is not of our world. So the idea of the method is that we keep together planet and people in a problem that encompasses both needs. But that means that you need to do research on what are the needs of the people and what are the needs of the planet regarding your approach. And this is like really important, because if you don't address those needs at the research stage, then it's going to be too late. Why? Yeah, because you already have like a prototype, you're going to have a solution, but this solution will not address the planetary need, and then it's going to be too late to actually fix it. So what do? We get to the problem, we create prototypes that address the problem, that together as a tension between people and planet, and then we do projection. Those projections are, future foresight thinking. We want to have a talk by Tamara on foresight. Those are very important tools to project how the world will look like in few years with this product or not. So what is going to happen? What is the impact that my solution will have on the world? What are the markets? How they will react? What are the scenarios that this solution will open? And you need to be aware of that at design time, because at this time you can still fix it. You can still say, no, that's not making the right to people, or no, this is not making the right to planet. Okay. Oh no, this solution is not gonna make people move, and that's very bad, because if people don't move, then we're gonna have an health issue. Okay. So consider that the innovation space that we are having is between the human need and the planetary need. So let's make an example, like how might we how might we make safe drinking water available to all while minimizing non-biodegradable waste generation? So that's an example of a tension between, a need of the people have available safe drinking water, but also minimizing non-biodegradable waste generation. So, it's not that the plastic bottle is bad in every situation, okay? Because sometimes you need that because you don't have access to other type of water, and then people will never consider not drink, okay? So the innovation space is between those elements. And this is the third tool that I am supporting in this talk, and it's also my last slide. Maya is asking me something, but I don't, you can talk about it, but that's my last slide, so it's open for question. So this is like a tool that you can use to actually make attention, which is a problem statement, which is a good starting point for any design problem. So how might we enable user to his need, goal, whatever, while planetary need, boundary, or pain? Because, if you don't start with the right problem, as our friend from Hans Grohe was telling us this morning, then you have a lot of issue in the rest of the project, because you will never know what ideas you are right and how to test them, because you don't know what is the problem you are trying to address. So this is like, let's say, an evolution of the how might we statement that consider also the planetary boundaries in the donut model that I was showing you before. So social foundation, otherwise people will not use this. Ecological ceilings, otherwise we're going to harm our planet. So we are a very lucky generation, because we are the ones that can get to choose how they want to be remembered. In few years, people are going to look back at us, and they're gonna either consider us as the ones that saved the planet, or as the ones that, while knowing it, destroyed it. So I already made my choice. I hope you are on my side.
Thank you, Matteo.
Thank you, Matteo.
You're welcome.
I think as always, you bring a lot of inspiration and food for thoughts into the audience, into the participants. Are there any questions? For sure, I know there's interest in the slides. Matteo, is an opportunity that you can share the slides with me, and I can put them in the folder for the students.
Of course.
Awesome. I see somebody else. Okay. There are no other questions currently. You can, I will upload it in the general folder. Alvina, go ahead.
Curious. Thank you, Matteo. That was truly inspirational. I've stumbled upon this point of view, and I noticed that there is also a bit of a discussion in the direction of, okay, is it really necessary to so explicitly position the planet needs, or do we need to rather change our thinking in the direction that human needs and planet needs are the same thing? Because if we think long term, actually, that would rather be, I don't know, the more sustainable solution, if you wish.
Yeah, we thought about that. And of course, human need are also planet need on the long term. But the problem in your research is that you will never observe that. So it's very hard to understand, while going on the supermarket and observing people carrying food around, that those plastic bags are going to harm the planet. If you don't study what are the consequences of plastic and what are the things that plastic brings to people. So I think that we need to actually consider them explicitly. Otherwise, in the design prompt, you don't have them. And then, of course, people are, especially designer, are aware. But if you don't place them there explicitly, then the risk of not considering them it's present. And we see that in many ways in a lot of products. Like, I don't know, like you get something like that. Okay, that's an electronic remote control. No, not every single thought on how that's going to be disposed. Okay, just says don't put it in the trash can, and you say thank you, but what should I have to do? What's the point in it? Maybe you can help me, right? I could disassemble it, put the plastic on one side, put the electronic on one other side. If you think about what is the end of life of this, but it's just not there. I'm designing a remote control. I'm not designing anything for the planet. No, you are, because the planet is part of what we are. But if you don't consider explicitly, then you cannot forget about it. Not because you're a bad person, but because it's just, you have so many things to carry in your mind, especially the ones that are on your table, that the things that are not on your table are kind of, out of vision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree in general. I was more the prompt to have a bit of a discussion, and I think especially in this so to say transitional period, when people are now only have recently started thinking again about how important sustainability is, and awareness is being raised about how humans affect the planet. Because, like, I don't know, in the previous couple of generations or more, there was the comfort of what the Industrial Revolution brought, and then nobody was thinking about about the impact on the planet.
Yeah, we feel that that's not happening even today. That a lot of designers consider themselves out of the scope for these issues. So that's why we think we need more education for future designer to consider those aspects explicitly.
And what's your approach to the research?
Usually, those kind of research are happening in academic field. So there's a lot of papers around, sustainability. Then, of course, now we have a reference framework which is really rich, which is the UN Sustainable Development Goals, that really help people, focusing on what are the KPIs that the world should consider while keeping sustainable development. And then if you have this kind of science fiction thinking or foresight, then you can start looking, downhill your industry of what are the consequences of things. Then last but not least, the role of policy. So with this, sometimes industry should advocate for better regulation, because it's very hard if the rules of the game are not equal to everybody to be just sustainable more than others, because sometimes that comes with a cost, and these costs need to be kind of shared evenly by everybody which is in the competition, because it's not only about the planet in terms of in the ecological ceiling, in terms of plastic or health. It's also about energy. Don't use too much energy. Like, for example, like in the automotive industry, there's this push towards electric cars, but it's not true that Tesla is sustainable. You put 150 horsepower under somebody that is traveling alone. What's this? This is totally unsustainable, and it's more sustainable than another 150 horsepower car into somebody powered by probably petrol, but it's still can you vision 150 horses that are just carrying one person? It's crazy, and it's totally not needed. And so it requires people to question, for example, what is energy and why we should use the right amount of energy to sustain our life, and not more than that, because it's still a waste. But all those thinking are coming if you have that model in your head, and you start considering, okay, what's going to happen in terms of energy, for example, to use it, energy to dispose, energy to consume. Like, what is this? And this is not really part of product development in many cases. That's why we think it's important to having that into each person pocket in terms of tool.
I have a question on the scale of innovation that can be created using using prosperity thinking. In my opinion, once you start to have very large systems, you get a lot of divergent goals. And so if you think of the prisoner's dilemmas, when you think of the planet, some countries, like less economically developed countries in India, for instance, would say that they want to have the human development first and then take care of the environmental issues. And so they would ask other countries who had an industrial revolution, which was extremely polluting, to make more effort. So my question basically is, how can it really scale up? Or do you reach like a ceiling where you won't be able to find a common grounds of understanding between different people or societies?
Needs are in a hierarchy, and that's true regardless. So if you cannot eat, then all the rest becomes priority number 2. And that's the case. So really, we should not consider us, them type of, let's say, mindset, but kind of we. And as COVID has shown, we could have issues like the ones are happening in India, also in the US or in Italy, where people are fighting for food every day. And this is happening in every country. And yeah, we can think that the problem are only on their side, but it's just different scale of problems. So if we solve those problems on our side, then it's as a starting point, and then we can scale those solutions and make them available sooner and cheaper in other parts of the world that are in need. I kind of don't think that we should really say that we are the good guys, that we are using less plastic, and another part of the world there are bad guys. It's the same thing. Like, there are people that cannot afford to pay 50 cents a day for a mask. Okay, so what do? You say, sorry. No, because that's going to harm the rest of the population as well. So that's part of the thinking. And that's why prosperity, because it's not only about economic, but also about societal issues that you need to take care of. And in the model that I showed you, there is also those kind of things. Sometimes you need to make something which is like cheaper, because otherwise people cannot access it. And then that's part of your design challenge. In a way, it is complex, but with the prototypes and this idea of constant learning, then you can, try to find the best possible solution that address the issue.
I agree with you, and I think something I would add to prosperity thinking would be like to really put forward the context on which you base your innovation, because you're speaking of electrical vehicles. In France, it's not so much of a problem because most of our electricity comes from nuclear, so we don't have a very big CO2 impact. And currently in China, they are building new coal factories to have enough electricity for the electrical vehicles. So it's the same innovation, but not the same context. And so you have very different impacts. And so I don't know what you think of it, but maybe there should be like some way to really say it works in this kind of systems because we have this kind of grounds. And if you remove parts of those, well, then maybe your innovation cannot scale at all.
I agree with you. We start by framing what can work in a specific context. With food is easier because you think global, but you act local. And those kind of new trends of localizing innovation to grasp the best value possible, it's one of the way to make it work and then to try to scale up. We do not believe that this kind of scaling, it's about making the same solution available to everybody, but it's about adapting, making relevant to the context. And if you start thinking about food, that's one that's there. That's why food companies have such a hard time to scale to not even global level, to national level. Because people have these different tastes, different habits. So they really need to make the product relevant to the people that they are trying to serve. And that's what we should do also with the other things that we are developing. But you're right, yeah, it's context specific and contingent is the actually right academic term. So it's a contingent approach. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I learned a new word. I didn't know contingent.
You're welcome.
And I think too, like the sort of element of speculative design comes into it as well. So the sort of further out you sort of forecast or project, the bigger variances there are in those futures and those sort of possibilities. So you're not only designing for particular contexts, but then potentially for multiple possible futures. So, and the sort of flow-on effects from things potentially also come into effect. I had a question, Matteo, around, I had two. I don't know which one I want to go with first. I'll go with the easier one. So in design thinking, obviously user testing and prototyping is kind of key to getting those insights and iterating. What role does user testing and prototyping play in prosperity thinking? And how would you encourage students to go about that if they're potentially playing with these complex systems and ideas and contexts? How would they go around sort of testing or validating those solutions in a sustainable system, if that's a question?
Yeah. There are some tools that the designer can use to project and prototype. Usually are simulation tools like system dynamics, agent-based models, discrete event simulations. Those can help the designer and the team to actually understand what are the impact of their actions and their choices on the long term. It's not something we use to train our designer often. But we started to educate the engineers to use this kind of tools because that's more on the mathematical side, and having like mixed group that can also manage those kind of tools is really helping the team to assess what are the long-term consequences of some behaviors, and also how behaviors can adapt and the products can really shape behaviors on the long term. We also use software, if that can help. It's called AnyLogic, which is, I think, one of the most interesting software so far to do that. Is this addressing your question?
Yeah, I think so. I think like realizing that, like I know we sort of use a lot of scenarios and a lot of research sort of goes into some of those, and I suppose, yeah, sort of role play and other methods to I think see how a particular product or solution or service would fit into this system or this sort of scenario that you've created. I think in some ways a lot of the traditional prototyping methods still work on a design level. So if you are designing the remote for disassembly, you can still, I think, apply a lot of the traditional prototyping and user testing things for the remote, but then how that sits in that broader system, yeah, is sort of an interesting one. And also particularly, I think, or a lot of the projects that we've sort of dealt with have a massive behavior change element, and sort of you have to, I quite liked the iceberg model, sort of flipping that and going, we actually need to change people's mental models to then change the structures to then create better patterns so that the events don't occur. And so, yeah, it's often, I find the students struggle to articulate the value of their concepts because it's sort of hypothetical in some ways that it will have this behavior change impact. So yeah, interesting to hear that you're sort of combining some of the science behind some of the sort of quantitative data, I suppose, to support some of those claims.
Yeah, it's more like, you know, when you are dealing with the complexity, then luckily in the last, let's say 30, 40 years, there are a lot of tools that many people from different field of science and, you know, society develop those kind of approaches on the complexity, understanding and design. The second point of this question is that you're not shaping a product, you're shaping a flow, something that, you know, your product is part of. So if you start thinking in those terms, it's kind of easier to consider what will be the flow with your product, and if that goes into the flow, goes out the flow, shapes the flow, and instead of, you know, designing an experience, you're designing a flow. I have another, let's say, element of that. We work with the Institute for the Future. They have a very interesting approach. I mean, you can check out their website, iftf.org. They're based in Palo Alto, and they do mostly foresight, but they do this kind of science fiction thinking, which I really like. It's called Artifacts from the Future. And they kind of, you know, create compelling stories to propose to people about, you know, what the future might look like with these kind of products. And then they're not really interested in the feedback, but more in the conversation that's part. So instead of, you know, thinking about feedback, you think about what conversation people have, and is this really making question about what they do? Is this really a good, you know, incentive to question their behavior? And that's really, you know, something that we can consider as a good projection of a future. And there's like a lot of other traditional, in a way, tools, you know, utopian, dystopians, and most probable future, these kind of things that can help the designer put their effort in perspective.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's almost, in some ways, creating more questions to consider or prompt, and that's like systems thinking, I think, is great. And I think your inclusion of it in the presentation was great. But yeah, realizing that if I do this, what happens to all these other different elements within that complex system? And yeah, layering in features is the other area of complexity. The other question I had was maybe more a simpler one. So you ended with the how might we statement that includes the planet. Similar to how might we statements where you kind of got the Goldilocks principle, where you don't want it too broad or too narrow to create that sweet spot for creative ideas. Do you have similar recommendations on how macro or micro the planet problem would be that you would input into the how might we statement? Did you have examples of is it something as to reduce plastic bags into the ocean, or is it sort of maybe a bigger thing that it's depleting fossil fuels from the environment, or what's the spectrum of those planet needs, or I can't remember what they were, the planetary needs, boundaries, or pains, and what's your advice on identifying good ones that allow that how might we to still remain open enough that you can still generate creative solutions within it?
Okay. Let's say that, yeah, there are examples of people, crazy people that say, yeah, I want to clean the ocean, and then they develop, some technology or some approaches to just take the big challenge. That would not be my usual approach. My usual approach is to embed this into any design effort you do, because that's what you believe in. So at a certain point, as a designer, you can always say, no, I'm not going to design this for you as a company, and I'm going to resign if we're going to put this kind of things into the market. And that's for me, a better approach to train our students that will go into corporate environment, and they need to embed in every act this kind of approach and this kind of thinking. And it's not a user only problem. So this is my way of getting the planetary challenge. So by training the highest number of designer, not only designer from design school, but designer in this broader sense of people that shape the future. Then I'm coming to your question. The more you go up into the level of the challenge, the more you go into policy. Mm. So that's kind of what's the dark side of this. We don't take policy too much into consideration while we do this, and that leaves policy to a lot of people that don't have design approach. So they kind of have this kind of linear thinking of, yeah, this problem, this solution. There is plastic, ban on plastic. Doesn't work. I mean, if you bring clean and affordable water to a population that was in danger for an earthquake, you bring a lot of plastic bottles. You want to have clean, sanitized product, you give plastic gloves. And sometimes you have those issues. So you need to don't ban plastic per se. You need to really understand a different approach to single-use, non-reusable materials. And this needs to go into every single design challenge you have. So it's not how we remove plastic from the ocean, but how we reduce the amount of plastic on every single act on our life. That inquire not only one designer that takes this challenge as as a mission for his life or her life, but into every design act that every single designer in the world is doing every day, because that will solve the problem. The other one is those kind of heroic effort, and I would not rely on that as a solution. So I don't know if I answered to your question, but that's what I believe. And then this kind of grand challenge can be addressed from individual single act, not of citizens, not of users, because they kind of are, they only have the power of choice, which is good, but not like it's kind of limited. the power of design is much greater, and also the responsibility that goes with it. You need to make, you know, bearing a bottle with you more trendy and cool and interesting than buying a plastic bottle. And that's the responsibility of the designer, not of the user. Then, of course, when this thing is available, it's already cool. You know, all the system makes this kind of pushes. Then it's nicer. Then it's also a user matter. But before that, not so much.
Yeah. Good answer. Yeah. Okay.
I'm heading to my next meeting, and I thank you for all the questions and the interaction. Thank you, Maya, for organizing this meetup. Of course, you can make anything available, and I'm available to all your students or whatever you want. Get in touch with me for any help or you know, conversation, because in this matter, unfortunately, there is no one solution and there is no right one. It's more, you know, best we can do at any specific